I hope you're all well. It is Wednesday morning here in the UK, about 9 a.m., and I've got a very important message for Twin Flames. I never thought I would be one of those people that puts out something, it might even have to be titled Important Message. Um, so, yesterday or the day before, I was guided to start writing down everything that they've ever told me, my guides. And I did that the day before yesterday, and then also last night. And as I was writing last night and channeling it all through, they hit upon something which has only just come into my awareness, regarding thought form and source energy, and how the two uh, fight it out, basically. And I just wrote down a little bit and then I went to bed. And as I was going to sleep, they started to show me the astral wars. And so the wars are basically where higher consciousness, which is the light, love energy, will fight thought form. And how it looked like something you might see like Vietnam, the old like footage of Vietnam. So like loads of clouds of napalm or whatever it was, lots of fire raining down, battling going on, destruction, like burned down trees. It just looked like a battlefield. And then they showed me it was just like a tree standing there, and the tree was black where it had been burned, but it's still standing, and fire in the background. And then they showed me the wounded warrior. So they showed me a soldier, and he was walking out from under the tree on his like upright, really tall. And they said to me, the war is ended, and the what did they say? They said the astral wars are ended, and then they said he's going to return. So this wounded warrior is like the divine masculine, the masculine, operator of the twin flame process. So that's what they basically told me after they showed me the wars. They said they're over and the masculines are returning. They're coming back from war. So that's part of the message. But then also carried on watching these wars for a little bit, and they started to explain everything about that and what goes on there. So I thought I'd just share all that because it's kind of important. It's really important. Oh, they also said that we're going to be called on now to do things. So this is like um, do things like maybe in society and around in the third dimension, talking, teaching, taking action, that kind of stuff. So I'm just going to explain it. I've written down some notes because it's really interesting. I was like, wow. This morning, also I woke up this morning and my first thought was, I'm going to have a brilliant day. And it was just an automatic thought. It wasn't like I had to find that thought. It just burst through. So that's another result of this being over. So just to explain, and I've done some of this in previous videos, but I'm going to do it again because it's fascinating. Okay, so you've got what do you have when you are not here as a human being? What are you? Higher consciousness, right? That's source God. But you can also, we're saying higher consciousness because it helps to understand later what everything is, but really it's just consciousness. That's all. You can also call that full consciousness, awakened state. You could call it that. It's love, light, oneness. It's where we're all one. This is corresponding to empathy and sentience, clairsentience, feeling other people as though they're yourself. It's also vibration and it's energy. It's non-form, all right? So source God, high consciousness, it's non-form, it's energetic. So it's only like radio waves, it's like electricity, can be like movie pictures. These are received through like claircognizance, which is just pure knowing. That also relates to empathy and sentience, claircognizance. It's like the amalgamation of everything, right? It relates to clairaudience, clairgustians as well, just kind of when I was writing this down, because sometimes you can smell something that's not there, right? That's a memory smell almost, or it's coming through clairgustians, basically. So everything in higher consciousness or consciousness is non-form, right? It's only pictures and sound and electricity, basically. It's the divine feminine, because it's where it's oneness. See, there's always things to add. Where it's oneness, it's also unconditional love. And that is relating to the mother experience and how mothers feel about their children, which is unconditional love. So that's how you know it's the divine feminine, because that's what it is, right? It's feminine energy. It's also spirit guides, soul, spirit, God, source, we said that already. Pleiadians, Arcturians, Galactic Federation, angels, any kind of beings, energetic beings that you see in your mind's eye, that you see in through your claircognizance, clairvoyance. It's all of those, all right. So that's what they are. They're not form, but mainly it's source, God, love, and it's light. That's important, love and light. And it corresponds, this is something else. So we've got like loads of things feeding into each other that I was shown yesterday. Corresponds to the sun and the light of the sun. So sunrise, sunset would be, for example, really good times to be tuning in to your highest consciousness to meditate. And that's known, but then if you know this, that is the light and it's the light of the sun, that all makes sense, doesn't it? Why that would be the best time to be meditating. Higher consciousness is beyond thought. So what is known through higher consciousness is only known through like an osmosis. And that osmosis is similar to the fact that the energy is the energetic beings, right? Because they're all non-form, and your knowing is non-form. It's not corresponding to a thought, it's corresponding to pure knowing. And that's what you know that comes from higher consciousness. So in relation to like the twin flame experience, it's that knowingness there. That you're seeing through the veil, that there's, well, let's not get into that too much, but there's feelings between the two. That there's similar, there's thinking that's the same, all that kind of stuff. All right, so that's higher consciousness. This is where it's going to get interesting. Now, when I was lying there this morning, I was saying to them, what is the moon? And the moon, they said, the psyche. Right. So when I got up this morning, I looked up what is the psyche. Psyche was a teaching that was brought about by Freud. And in the psyche, he talks about the unconscious, the conscious and the supraconscious. The unconscious, he calls it the ID, right? It's instinct, pleasure seeking, and primal needs. Primal need is joy and happiness, right? It's the inner child. He's tapping in there. It's the inner child. That's what the idea is, the unconscious. The drive for pleasure is what the inner child wants, right? Roller coasters, candy canes, candy floss, fun times, okay? Consciousness, he calls it the ego. We talked about ego, right? This is the inner adult, the rationalist, the logicist, the stop that now, stop having fun and do something more sensible instead, part of the self, right? And then he talks about the supraconscious, calls it the superego. This is like morality, parents' voice, church voice, school voice. It is in fact, and we're going to get into this a bit more, thought form in the role of guide, right? So it's coming from outside of the self, it's coming from collective thought form, thoughts collated by humanity and delivered as truth, right? That's what the superego is. Now, what he left out is higher consciousness, because higher consciousness is the direct connection that every human has to source, to their own higher self, and to that energy of love and oneness that is the divine feminine energy. So, source is not also non-judgmental. Source energy has no judgment of anything, and it is openness, acceptance. You know, these are the things that are unconditional love, and that's what source is. All those things, right? So just to point out that, because that's what the psyche is, right? But there's higher consciousness as well, so we've got to figure that in. Now, where they told me about, they started to talk to me about the planets, and I think I mentioned that the other day, but I was mentioning it kind of just, it had come in through someone's reading, and so I put it out because it's now, you know, part of my understanding, but they told me more about that. So there's more to know, and it's more specific. Right. So you can, you know how I talked about in that other video the other day, I talked about how you can view the human coming into being and it moving through the universe and it taking up energy through the planets. And when we have like astrology, and astrologers use the planets to read the human or read the collective, that is about how humanity is formed, basically, both inside of yourself and outside of yourself. So the collective understanding can be formed through using these planets, and also the inside of the human can be understood through using these planets. So this is how it is. And this is, I think it's out there probably, this information, but it's just they showed it to me. So you might know this already. Earth is the human, right? So you're basically inside of your brain is the earth as well. Your whole brain is the same as the earth. And then as you come into being human, you're coming through these energies. Mercury, which is thought, Venus, which is love, and light, by the way. And there's Mars there. Mars is like anger, drive, ambition, willpower. So that's it. When we talk about chakras as well, we're talking about corresponding these planets to chakras. So Mercury really is going to be corresponding to, I'm feeling, right? It's corresponding to throat, because it's thought, but it's the human capability of thought, and that always turns into something being said, right? Whether it is from love or whether it is from anger. So this is what I'm feeling is coming through. It's the Mercury is the throat chakra, really, in relation to that. Venus, it's heart energy. Heart energy. It's also, these aren't like, there's no like definitive like ending, because it's inhuman. It's also connected to the thought and the mind. There's levels of what is love energy that are moving through the human at any one time. So you can be totally in the heart, you could be a little bit in the heart and a bit in the mind. You can move completely to the mind and be out of the heart, right, and not feeling anything. So there's all like levels and degrees. It's not like one size fits all, black and white all the time. Things change minute to minute. And then anger, drive, ambition. This is dark energy as well. So just to, you can correspond that. Oh, Mars would correspond to the solar plexus, right? And then Earth, brain, human, basically, and physical beingness. So your physicality, your whole body. Then you've got these other planets, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune. These are the outer planets, and these are corresponding really to the collective. So this is the whole of humanity they would correspond to, right? These would be your base, down in your base chakra. These would be your past and your past lives and your history, your human history, all of your life being here, your family, all that kind of stuff. It's all in those. And collective experience as well. So experience outside of yourself. So that's what those relate to, chakra-wise, and also in the collective experience. Anything else? I think that's it. So it's just interesting to see how those planets play a part in human experience and connect you into higher consciousness, right? The sun being higher consciousness, which they said back here, the sun is higher consciousness. And that's why sunlight is good for you. So, and then the moon. So this was the bit that I got a wow moment over for me earlier on today, because last year, if you listened to me before, I was talking about these moon cycles, working with these moon cycles. It was a bit frustrating because I thought, being human right now, I, just like everybody else out there, wants to be in a physical union. And, what I first reach for is in any understanding is, how does this apply to me coming into physical union? It's going that. It's that has now faded away, but it's got faded over, many years, that need for that understanding to relate to that. When I started to talk about the moon cycles would have been the end of actually 2019. So bearing in mind my process is evolving constantly, my understanding's evolving. And when I was relating to the moon back then, I was only understanding it in regard to physical reunion, and I put out videos about that. You might remember if you listened. Anyway, so now they're bringing in all this new information that I'm being led to see and understand, of why we're here and what it's all about. And when they started to talk to me about the moon and it relating to the psyche, and then the psyche being, I had a loose understanding of the psyche, and it was about the unconscious. But when I looked at this today, right, when I got up, the three things they've always talked about. They talked about the triad, they talk about the fleur de lis, and the Trinity, right? So the three is a theme that crops up again and again and again in relation to the human, and it's also the three elements of the psyche, which is the moon. What they told me about the moon is that it's a magnifier and it's a diminisher. So just like you have full moon, that's the light, it's a magnifier, and the dark of the moon, the new moon, which is a diminisher, and that is the push-pull of the psyche. So as far as the moon is concerned, whilst we're here being human, its activity is about the push-pull that goes on inside of us in relation to who we are and how evolved we are. Because that magnifying and that diminishing, which is the light and the dark, and it is the it's the balance of the divine feminine and the divine masculine. And it's also a push-pull because the moon changes, right? And it circles every month. Or do we circle it, or it circles us? I don't know. But it goes through a monthly cycle. And that's the push-pull that we get that's going on every month. So it's going to take you between your unconscious and your conscious. It's going to take you between your inner child and your ego. This supraconscious, this is the thing, right? We are going to switch. This is the evolution of humankind. We are going to switch from this understanding of psyche. We are going to switch to the understanding, not being the unconscious, the conscious, and the supraconscious, but being the unconscious, the conscious, and higher consciousness. So instead of calling it these things anyway, you would call it, inside of the human being, you would call it source, higher self, higher consciousness. You would call it ego, the inner adult, the rational, the logical perspective. The rational perspective, although I think that's got to go because that's not what it is. It's a lower energy. It's lower consciousness. That's what you call it, lower consciousness. It's not understanding that we come from source. And the inner child, the pleasure-seeking inner child that does know we are connected to source. That's why the inner child always wants to have fun, because that's what source is guiding us to do always. It's to have fun and let go and feel free and be open, and everything that a mother who has unconditional love for her child would want that for that child. So this is going to change. This is a human evolution, that these things are going to change. And what the moon has been doing all these years is the push-pull of that, is the magnifier and the diminisher in relation to the light and the dark, and the switch, the battle, let's say the battle, the astral war between the higher consciousness and the lower consciousness. So that's what the astral wars are. They're a battle between higher consciousness light and lower consciousness dark. So that's how the moon relates, how it is related to this, and why you go through feeling different at different times of the moon. There's probably a lot more to that understanding, but that's what we say here for now, right? The astral plane, so astral plane, you enter when you go to sleep. You can access it when you're awake as well, if you're so inclined. And also, even if you don't want to, like I did last night. And because you're meant to learn something, right? So, like they said, astral plane is where the battle is taking place. There has been a war going on, and it's been going on forever, since ever we've been on this planet, between higher consciousness and lower consciousness. So now we're going to get into how and why of the war. Right, lower consciousness is thought form. Higher consciousness is just knowing. It's, all those things: purity, oneness, love, light, ease and flow, nothingness, the energy of just like calmness, no worries, no fear, feeling good, feeling great. Waking up in the morning with the first thought being, I'm going to have a brilliant day, just coming out of nowhere without having to actually search for the thought. That's higher consciousness. So, and thought form can take many, many shapes, right? But lower thought form is always going to come from the ego. We'll just talk about the ego for now. We're going to talk about the superconscious later and what this is and what that has been. But right now, let's just refer to the ego. So lower thought form is the rational and the logical. And those are very often the negative. Most often. Rational, logical is negative. So it's like the worries, and it's the fears, and it's the talking yourself out of happiness, basically. It's anything from like repetitively worrying about money or not having enough money and being stuck on that thought for an extended period of time. There's worries about all sorts of, mostly people worry, don't they? They worry about their life and what they're going to do with it, and their friends and relatives and their health and money and where they're going to live. And they try and rationalize and themselves into the future, and create the future by worrying. So where all this worry is coming from in thought form, it's like, right, I've got to say this to explain it so you can see it as I see it. And that thing I talked about in the other video about how when you come into being human, you come through and you take on these attributes, thought, love, and your physical body, but you remain in vibration. So you come through like a shooting star onto the earth plane to be human. And yeah, I've lost myself. Where am I going? Oh, sorry. I'm back again. It's quite early. It's early for me. Right. So you come through to be human, right? Once you are human, so that's the projection. As you come through, that is the projection of source. That is source emerging into the physical to be you. Right? And then, once you're here, you create your life, and you create that by projecting outwards through thought form. So as source comes in, as light comes in to create humanity, thought form, once humanity is on the earth grid, projects outwards in thought to create the reality that exists on the earth. So it's a dual project. So all that, they tell me they're Pleiadian. They tell me they're Abrahams, right, that are bringing us in for this experience, and we are moving in for this experience. But once we're here, we're given the mind to create everything that we want whilst we're here. So it's those thought forms, right, as we go up into consciousness, that create the astral wars. So you can either just be in a state of let go, right, and knowing, where you're in higher consciousness, and that would be things like, oh, I just know my life's going to work out. I just know everything's going to be fine. I'm not going to worry about anything. I'm just going to relax. I'm going to take it easy. I'm going to think nice thoughts. I'm going to have a good time. I'm going to put feeling good first, right? Inner child, part of the unconscious. So, and then in the inner child, like they said, you're connecting into higher consciousness because that's what higher consciousness wants from you. So you could be in that state, in which case you're not adding to the war, or you're in thought form, you're in ego, and you're worrying about everything, and you're trying to like control your life with thought. And the ego, because it's lower thought form, is the worrying thought. So it's like, if I worry about this will get better. If I constantly worry about having no money, that's going to make me have, well, it doesn't, does it? Because law of attraction, we know, states that you draw to you what you think. And through, you create how you feel through how you think. And the thought creates resistance inside of you to feeling good. If it's a worrying thought, you go into resistance of feeling good. So you're only going to bring to you what is of a worrying thought. So these thought forms, as they go out into the astral plane, are in conflict to the higher consciousness coming in through the astral plane. You could say as well, like, you go fifth dimension with your higher consciousness, if you want to call it that. Fourth dimension with the astral plane. And then third dimension with the earth. So what's created on the earth is coming through the fourth dimension. And it's what's going to win there. But like, what's going to win? Is the dark going to win or the light going to win? So when they showed me last night the war, and they said the war's ending and the men are coming home from the war, basically, that's what's happened. So, and you know, at the end of a war, I imagine it's not going to be just like, okay, war's over, snap your fingers, and then we're all going to like walk off into the sunset. There will be a filtering down and a filtering through of what is better and what comes from the war ending, you know, slowly recovery. And what they're saying is how this relates to the twin flames as well, and the evolution. You see, it's all about the evolution of mankind. Because as we come into this, as the light has won, the war is over, and we come into more and more people, this is the filtering down, are going to come into the understanding that we have a direct connection to source, each and every one of us, and they're going to start operating more from their higher consciousness and less from the rational ego mind, which is only the earthly part of them, right? That's the thinking part. So that's, I guess, really what needs to be known about that. I'm going to get onto that superconscious in a minute, because that was when I was like, oh my God, I get it. I find that this is it, about something or other that for me was very important, but also, yeah. So the light has won, basically, and the war is over and the men are coming home. So it means we're moving from a paradigm of negativity to positivity. And this is going to operate through the human race. This is what we call ascension, evolution. This is what twin flames are here for. And this, you see, the astral wars, don't think for 1 minute that it's something that is like tangible and that you can see. There's no like planes out there. It's just, it's the astral. It's fluid. It's energy. It's thought form, and it is higher consciousness. That's what it is. It's thought form, and it is pure knowing and clarity and God energy, love energy. So that's what it is, right? And it's inside of you as it is outside of you. So you can view the astrals, right? And you can take part in those wars. The masculines have taken part in those wars by it being inside of them, as calling it the dark night of the soul. We have it inside of us. We call it the purge. You call it the end of the war, the arrival at happiness, clarity, love, right? Inside of each twin flame, that's been going on. That's why the moon is so important to twin flames, because of the push-pull of the dark and the light inside. Bring it to conclusion, the end of the astral wars. Bringing the whole of you, like inside of you is the microcosm. The microcosm is everything inside of you that exists outside of you. The macrocosm is the universe. So as the planets represent the universe that we look at outside of ourselves, they also represent everything that is inside the human. You don't need to get too down into the nitty-gritty of what is which planet. They're telling me the understanding will come later, you know. But just to understand that everything is inside the human is a representation of what is outside of the human. Macrocosm universe, microcosm human. So the battles, the astral wars that they call it, is this battle going on inside of every human. So you could picture it through your mind, because it's energy, and it's inside of you as energy as well, right? It's the ascension and the evolution that comes from the end of the war, the ending of the dark night of the soul, the ending of the purge, that brings about the happiness, clarity, and love that becomes the human. The evolution of the human is that happiness, clarity, and love. It's the higher function. It's the higher consciousness in full operation, in control mode. And in each twin flame as that comes in, this is moving into the collective experience, so that whole of humanity will start to experience this operation from higher consciousness rather than operation from lower consciousness. Everything's connected to everything else, so we're all one, that beyond the physical existence, all humans are one energy, all energy of oneness. But the twin flames came in for the experience of oneness in human form, to experience that connection to another human being as though it is themselves. And the moon facilitates that experience, the arrival into the light. We said that. So basically, and twin flames, everything multiplies, okay? So energy, I said that in the last video, any energy, vibration, consciousness can do anything it wants. In terms of that, as you project out with your thought, right, where the astral wars have been, you could project out things like the Akashic records. So you could see that there is, in energy, a filing system where all the records of everything is kept. But there isn't, because it's not a tangible, higher consciousness is not a filing system. It is just pure consciousness. But that's a human projection. So that's an all right human projection, isn't it? There's no harm in that. Although, is there? Because if you're saying I can read the Akashic records, you're saying maybe other people can't. So scrap that, because everybody can connect into higher consciousness. It's there for everybody. It's God inside of you. So even that would be separation consciousness. At its fullest extreme, there are things like religions that say only a priest can connect to God for you. Right, it's the same thing, it's separation. So the thought forms project out, and but if you have a thought form that is, we are all one, we're all connected, we are all this, with it, that is a closer thought form projecting towards empathy and totality, they're saying, to conclusion, they're saying, than one of any kind of separation. You see? Even if you want to project out and say, have a thought form that states there are monads and there are soul groups, well, that's just a way of a human trying to explain how we're all connected. Scrap that. There's consciousness. We're all one. There's no barrier to get into oneness in a thought. Everybody's soulmates, and everything multiplies. Right? Consciousness multiplies. Consciousness is evolution. Higher consciousness, it's what it wants, what it does, is evolution. That's what it's here for. That's what we are here for. We're the human that goes through the evolution of consciousness in the human form. So, so this move from lower consciousness to higher consciousness, that is a human evolution, will multiply. The event, people talk about the event. Well, that's what that is. It's the multiplication of higher consciousness. So things like twin flames will multiply, because the twin flames are the leading edge, the forerunner of the evolution of human consciousness, because they're having that experience of oneness between the two of them. So that's going to move into more humans having that experience of, and you don't have to be born into that. That can just start at any point. You can be initiated at any point with an awakening experience. It's not like if it hasn't happened to you yet, doesn't mean it's not going to happen to you. It could still happen to you. It's just it's an evolution, because it goes on inside of you. It's it's not, you can't bring it down to a human understanding of, I was born to be a circus manager, and it's not that. You can evolve into anything that's involving the energy with your mind and your thought, that it can go through any evolution. Do you see what I mean? So that experience will multiply. Awakening experiences, people becoming connected in to source, people receiving information, knowing information through all those faculties they talk about, the clairaudience, claircognizance, everything like that, people connecting through to spirit guides. They'll use whatever thought form that might take, you know, things like Akashic records, people seeing monads and all that kind of stuff. It's how their brain is drawing them to connect. So it's just old paradigm, that's all. Because once you move beyond that spectrum, then you know that it's just consciousness and just connecting into source God. It's less in the brain, right? It's less that you're working within the brain, having to see a visual of what it is that is consciousness, like anything, like angels or Pleiadians or whatever. So that's the whole of the humanity coming into clarity. This event that's done that, this is COVID, that has done that. And what they're telling me about this is that it's kind of like it's been brought in. It's an event that's been brought in to raise the vibration of humanity, because although, yeah, it's a very, it's a dark event. And, I know you're going to have thoughts about that, and you're going to start thinking things, and you're going to start to want to think it through and, come to a logical and rational conclusion, because people die and people get sick and people are overworked and people stressed and people lose it. And I know you're going to want to think it that way, but the event, the COVID that's been brought in, it's an awakening experience. It is, as you come out of that COVID experience, as the whole of humanity comes out of that experience, thought form is changing. So people are searching inside of themselves for what is better. That's as simple as that. They're looking inside, because it's been so dark and there's been so much like confinement, so much facing self, so much dark night of the soul, so much, that people have been pushed into. The only way out of that is a rise into higher consciousness inside each and every individual that exists. And the people that have died, that have taken that role on to die, that's brought pain to others that are connected to them as well, the prompting there of the heart-opening experience that death brings in every individual that witnesses and experiences that. All that stuff is what is the awakening through that. So just to say that is what they're telling me about that as well. And when they say the wars are over, that means that will be coming to an end, that COVID experience that we've been through. So there is a light at the end of that tunnel coming. Also looking at that's created by thought itself. So that is mass fear that's created that event. You see? That's mass fear. Now, I'm going to talk quickly about the supraconscious, because that relates to the mass fear. And so where we have this supraconscious, right, which is the voice of morality that comes from parents, it comes from church, it comes from school, it comes from anyone outside of the human that is. But it comes in someone else's thought form, which is why we say the Mercury connects to the throat chakra, because it's the voiced thought, right? Or the written thought or the spoken thought that is this super consciousness. I want to be really careful about how I put this out, because this is really what I found really important. Now, you having like your incarnated experience, right, where you come in and you come into a human being and you're on a twin flame path. I haven't written any of this down, I'm going to do it now. You go through what are dark experiences in your life, so you are face to face with what comes from the supraconsciousness. And what comes from that is judgment, shaming, being shamed, being judged, being taken out of self-love, being told you're wrong, being told there's something wrong with you, being told you should be different, being told you're not normal, being told you're bad, various things. You know, we could go on, right? Because the super consciousness, as it relates to morality, the church, people outside of yourself that tell you what's right or wrong, those, if you like, energies, anything that has the energy of that has been corrupted by the dark energy of thought. So you can have thought forms that are good, like we said, higher, but they're about your own happiness and being happy and everybody, having a nice time and everybody getting on. The dark thought forms are the controlling thought forms. They are the controlling, yeah, that's the word. They're the judgmental thought forms. They are the taking away from yourself thought forms. We call them dark energy thought forms, narcissism, sociopathy, you can call them anything you want, psychopathy, right? Those are the dark thought forms that infiltrate anything that is thought form, that is based through thought form, that is based through a human construction, and superconscious is a human construction. It's the God that lies outside of the self. It's the God from human form, right? So, and as a twin flame, you come here to battle the astral war, which is the dark and the light, which is the thought form and the higher consciousness inside of yourself and outside of yourself. So you're going to be faced in your life with these, perhaps these organizations, perhaps your school telling you there's something wrong. You might have been one of those kids they take in, calling your parents and say this child needs to be medicated because they are, a child, and they're not landed in their physical body yet, ridiculous. Or it could be, they say medicate because you're unruly or whatever. It's just, that's dark energy. You could be, have a narcissistic parent who tells you you're very lucky to have a roof over your head because they could have put you in a home when your mother died. You could be, there's lots of things that you could have experienced that are a result of the super consciousness. You could be going to a church, or for me, I went to a Church of England school, and there was no empathy in that place. There was only judgment, and there was only telling you you're a bad person, telling you there was something wrong with you. You needed to repent of all your sins. We're not sinners for a start, so there's no need to repent of any sins. So basically, this is the dark thought form. This super consciousness is based around dark controlling thought forms that are in society, that are around you. I'm going to go with narcissists because that's the most relevant one. You might have to face down many, many narcissistic institutions and people in your life being a twin flame, because you're here to battle within and without the dark. So that's what kind of hit me today, was like how it has been a controlling force of humanity, because humans have been in this understanding that we have us and we have our unconscious and we have judgment, and we have it through the institutions that provide that for us, church, school, even bosses and parents and everything like that. And that's dark energy, and the switch is going to come, the triad, the trinity. The fleur-de-lis is a symbol of that. The three little birds in the Bob Marley song that I kept getting the other year is going to be from the trinity. It's going to be us, right, our ID, the inner child, and the conscious ego and the higher consciousness will take the place of the superconsciousness. So this energy is dying off. The end of the wars means that the narcissistic energy is dying off. These organizations are going to lose control of humanity because the dark energy comes through these organizations and infiltrates every area of life and makes people unwell and physically unwell as well. So it's all going to die off now, and this is going to take the place. Higher consciousness, as more people tune in to their own, tune into higher consciousness through their own abilities, and see through this, and this will, it's going to die off. It's dying off. It's died off in the astrals. It's ended in the astrals. So the next thing is it comes to Earth, right? The astrals is the fourth dimension. Next is the third. So it's going to die off on the Earth, and we'll all end up in higher consciousness. And our egos will be different in that, because the ego is the part of yourself that talks to yourself rationally and logically. So your rational and logical thought will be, I'm going to be happy. Simple as that. You know, there's a lot we could say that add, but that will be it. Yeah, so what they told me then following that is we're going to have more to do, right? So this is going to, now go back to here because I wrote this bit down. Work to be done, they said. Also, when I got up this morning, they said there's work to be done. Now, I have something that already came to me at the end of last year, which is around food, and I've still got to put that video out. But basically, we're going to be assisting in breaking down this narcissistic spectrum that's been controlling mankind. This is could be simple thing. Well, your own thoughts, right, are going to change. Your evolution, right, as a twin flame, that it goes on inside of you, and you come into this happiness and love energy, higher consciousness, means that as you've cleared the dark spectrum inside of yourself, right, and you cleared away the darkness, you're automatically going to come into these higher thoughts of your own life. So that's going to be done. It will just happen. You can always assist it by being an awareness of what goes on in your thoughts. That's why I always talk about being an awareness of your thoughts, because that's assisting what's coming through. But you're going to end up there anyway in this, like, waking up, I'm going to have a brilliant day thought rather than anything else, a heavy feeling, a dark feeling, because the wars are over. The work to be done lies outside of yourself now. So the work done in yourself means it's the work outside yourself that takes over. This could be really simple things like how you relate to other people in conversation. So, you know, it's like how far this goes as far as human evolution. It'll be like, we'll be asking each other, how are your thought forms today? Are you having positive thought forms? Are you having negative, you know, are you positive? Are you doing your positive thought? Because we're going to understand that it's the thought forms that create either a happy experience or an unhappy experience being human. It's the thought forms that create it. So it could be something like that, you know, that you find yourself asking people how their thought forms are. Like you might have once asked somebody, how are you feeling today? Or how are you today? So things like that. But other work bringing us all into the light and change, right. So this is where because I'm nearly at the end now. I want to talk about Harriet Tubman. I watched the movie about Harriet Tubman. If you don't know who she is, she was she was a woman who was enslaved, and she was in the south of the USA, you know, back in the, I think it's the late 17th or, I don't know when, early 18th century, whatever. And she, I don't know when actually, scrap that, because I really don't know when, but that's what her life was for a while anyway. So she escaped, and she escaped to the north, and she was there for a few years, and then she became part of this group. She became part of this group that were abolitionist group that were opposing slavery and were trying to change things. And she was called on by God to go back to where she'd come from, and she thought, she was married when she escaped, right? She was married, and she didn't tell him. She just escaped without him because she didn't want him to get caught and get hurt or anything. So she was trying to protect him. So she escaped without him, and then after a few years, she was called on by the voice of God to go back to where she came from. And she thought she was going back to get him. That was her husband. When she got back, she found out he'd remarried. And what she did instead was she rescued loads of people, and she took them over the border and to freedom. And for her whole life, that's what she did. She went back and forth, and she rescued people, and she guided them to freedom. And she was guided by her higher self. So it was the voice of God that told her like the direction to take, and how to get back safely without being caught. It was all higher self. She was very, very connected to her God energy, her higher consciousness, herself. So that was her life. But the thing is that it's like she thought she was going back for her husband, but she wasn't. And she even says that. I don't know what I think. I don't think. Let's not think. She thought she was going back for her husband. Turned out she was going back for everybody else, right? So she was like a light worker, and she rescued all these people. Now, I'm not saying that you're all going to be like, because you're twin flames, oh, let's forget about the union with the twin. You've got another purpose, because we've had evolution since that. So, and I know all twin flames are coming into physical union. So don't think that that means that you're not. But the thing is, Harriet Tubman's reason for existing was that reason, right? It was to rescue people. So, and take them into the light, rescue them from the dark energy. Now, that's the work of twin flames. It's a similar kind of work in different ways, each person in a different way, perhaps. And like I said, partly it could be just asking people how your thought forms are, that kind of stuff. It could be talking to people about things, drawing them towards the light. This thing that I've got around food, I was guided to find out where dark energy lies in the production of food, and also in what we're told we should be eating. And I've been already, all I'm doing right now is I'm changing one person at a time. So anybody in the street that I'm stood next to, if I'm waiting to get in a food shop, I end up telling them about this. Or the shop owners that I go in that sell the food, I'm telling them about this if I can. When I was guided to find out all this stuff about food, I went on loads of groups in Facebook that might have information as like research, because when my guides tell me to do something, it's not like they tell me everything. They tell me one thing, and then I have to go out and do research, reading, learning, that kind of stuff. So I went on loads of Facebook groups and started interacting. And a lot of stuff, I go on there every day. Again, I see people making comments, and people are misguided in what they think is a healthy way to eat. So I'm changing one person at a time with a comment. But the thing is, that's all I'm doing right now, but even that is something, right? I don't know how far that's going to go, because that's, the Harriet Tubman aspect. How far is that going to go? How many people rescuing? How much of a project will that be in me doing that? I don't know yet. I don't know, because I'm at the start of that. So I'm just saying, you also will have work that needs to be done. So you will be brought into some kind of work that is in relation to bringing people towards the light, in terms of dismantling this dark and negative energy that has been surrounding the human collective since forever, since we were able to think, that has been controlling, using controlling mechanisms. And there is like in the case of the food thing, the controlling mechanism that's in place around what we eat is leading to illness. It's leading to, you could say also that plays a part in the spread of COVID, because it's reducing the lies around food, and the lies are for financial gain. So the controlling of the human race there is about using us as fodder for financial gain. It leads to an inability to be resistant to things like colds and flu and COVID, because it's disrupting the immune function of the body. And so there, the dark energy having control over what we eat has a very, very significant physical effect on the human race as well. You see how things are connected. So, but anyway, that is what I had to say, that they asked me to put out, that they told me about. And a lot of it's not very twin flamey about the union or whatever, but like I said, they said the war's over and they're coming home. So that's that. All right, I'm going to go now. I hope that was interesting to you. And I will put that food video out soon. It's just quite a difficult one to make because it's all connected to my personal experience and the collective. And it's like, again, it's like a spiraling story. So, all right then. Lots of love. Take care. Bye.